Inclusive teaching, supporting all students in the college classroom. Addressing microaggressions.
You know, what I find is the most productive way that instructors can respond to microaggressions, especially if they have committed one, is to not be defensive, to be honest and open, and to be able to say to the student, you know, I think that I've said or done something that has offended you or upset you. What is it that I've done? It's that type of, attitude and position that will allow individuals, instructors, to be able to facilitate difficult dialogues on race, gender, and sexual orientation that arises in the classroom. The second thing that I recommend to instructors is that none of us are immune from inheriting the racial, gender, sexual orientation biases of our forebears. We have all gone through a strong process of cultural conditioning, and we harbor these biases, so that it's really important that we admit to that. When you are honest and demonstrate that and tell narratives to students that, you know, years ago, I used to do the following thing or was fearful of Black individuals, and I had to go through this process of learning. When the instructor models such openness and non-defensiveness to their students, it really creates a different environment where the students don't feel like, well, they begin to think, geez, my professor is equally flawed. Maybe I can be honest too. And this honesty and sharing in a non-defensive manner really is the key to success. The other thing that I oftentimes tell instructors is that we will all commit blunders, racial, gender, sexual orientation blunders. It's not how you cover up that's important, it's how you recover. And so having that knowledge is also important. I also think it's important for them to begin to realize in one way or another that, that they do have these biases and they too are grappling with it, and to try to get the students to join with them in exploring an area that needs to be explored and touched upon.
Unproductive responses to microaggressions.
There are things that are very unproductive in an educational environment when a microaggression, or what I call a difficult dialogue on race, gender, or sexual orientation begins to occur, and that is to do nothing, to avoid the topic, to sidetrack it. I see this oftentimes with instructors when something that is racially loaded occurs, there is silence in the room. And the professor who refuses to touch that issue is colluding with everyone else that racial, gender topics are to be avoided. The other thing that I oftentimes find very unproductive for professors to do is to table a discussion and never return to it. One of the things that we find with professors is that they are fearful. In fact, this comes in another study that we did. They feel not only paralyzed, but not being able to handle the situation. They are fearful that the situation, the classroom, is going to become a classroom from hell, that people will get angry, upset, argue with what's going over. Students will storm out of the class and complain to the dean or the department chair. That's one of the greatest fears that professors and instructors, our teachers have, is a loss of control. So they try to avoid the topic or to, in some sense, end it in one way or another. The most common things that we find that professors do is to end the difficult dialogue going on and saying, Mary and Jim, why don't we talk about this in our office? Now, what they don't realize has happened is that that difficult dialogue that is going on a racial topic is not just confined to these two individuals. The entire class students are being involved in it. They may not be saying anything, and by the professor taking it out of that context to deal with in the his or her office, really deprives a learning opportunity for what is happening in the classroom. Another thing that I oftentimes tell instructors when a difficult dialogue occurs is that it is emotional. Anytime you talk about race, racism, whiteness, and white privilege, you are entering the realm of a difficult dialogue that is full of emotionality. You are pushing buttons in people. And oftentimes I will see professors saying, Janice, calm down. Let's respect one another. Calm down. What they don't realize is that they are cutting off a major avenue of communication, which is emotive. One of the things in academia and classroom teaching is we believe that emotions are antagonistic to reason. When you talk about issues of racism and sexism, you are pushing buttons in which there is embedded and nested feelings. As long as you prevent these feelings from coming out and achieving meaning, you are in essence colluding with not wanting to deal with this problematic topic. So remember, difficult dialogues on race and gender is oftentimes brewed in silence. Why is it brewed in silence? Well, this is where instructors are very fearful. The first level of threat or fear is a fear that whatever I'm going to say or do will be appearing racist to other people. So if you've ever watched a dialogue on race, and I generally stimulate that in my classes, people will tiptoe around the topic. The professor oftentimes tiptoes around the topic and talks about it as if it's a content issue, an intellectual issue of what's happening. But they will tiptoe around the topic. They will stutter and stammer when they talk about certain issues devoted to race, and they engage in what I call rhetorical incoherence. And if you are aware of process that is going on, those are signs that you have entered a potential difficult dialogue on race. And that's where professors who are aware of it can intervene and make what I call process observations. But the greatest fear and threat that I find that both instructors and students have is the acceptance and realization that they do harbor biases and prejudices. And because it assails their image of themselves as a good, moral, decent human being. Other people can be racist, but not me. I'm a good person. I stand up against hate crimes. But for them to begin to explore their implicit biases makes them realize that they have engaged in oppressive, discriminatory behavior, unintentionally perhaps, outside their level of conscious awareness. But that awareness is scary to them. And it's that second level that we find the greatest battle. And that's why I was saying that professors who have been able to understand themselves as racial cultural beings and who are able to talk about their own racial awakening free other students from being able to talk about those topics as well.